Welcome to our Sunday follow-up for Easter Sunday, Sunday, April 20th, 420. May have some other connotations with it, but April 20th, 2025. Welcome to our Sunday follow-up for Easter. And we are going to go through Easter today. More specifically, we're going to go through the resurrection accounts. We're going to start with Matthew, then go to Mark, Luke, and then John, and talk about or identify some of the similarities and some of the dissimilarities, but most especially we're going to talk about the similarities and the main message that we're getting across. So, I hope you're all having a wonderful, blessed Easter, and that likewise, we can enjoy some time of thinking today. So, we're starting with Matthew chapter 28. Now, after the Sabbath, toward dawn, I think I'm going to blow this up just a little bit more. There. Nope, don't want that. Now, after the Sabbath, toward the dawn of the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to see the tomb. And behold, there was a great earthquake, for an angel of the Lord descended from heaven and came and rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothing white as snow. And for fear of him, the guards trembled and became like dead men. But the angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you seek Jesus who was crucified. He is not here, for he has risen, as he said. Come, see the place where he lay. Then go quickly and tell his disciples that he has risen from the dead. And behold, he is going before you to Galilee. There you will see him. See, I have told you." So they departed quickly from the tomb with fear and great joy, and ran to tell his disciples. And behold, Jesus met them and said, "Greetings." And they came up and took hold of his feet and worshipped him. Then Jesus said to them, "Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee, and there they will see me." Now, this seems pretty straightforward. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary, so the two women in this case, go to the tomb. There's a great earthquake. And if you recall, there was a great earthquake in the crucifixion account where the earth shook and the temple curtain was torn from top to bottom. For an angel of the Lord descended. Again, descends with a loud cry or an earthquake. And he rolls back the stone. The soldiers, the guards, tremble in fear and become like dead men. They die out of fear. No, like dead men, they don't actually die, because that's the next part. While they were going, behold, some of the guard went into the city and told the chief priests all that had taken place. Note, they told the chief priests, not the centurions. And when they had assembled with the elders and taking counsel, they gave a sufficient sum of money to the soldiers and said, Tell people his disciples came by night and stole him away while you were asleep. And if this comes to the governor's ear, we will satisfy him and keep you out of trouble." So they took the money and did as they were directed. And this story has been spread among the Jews to this day, that the disciples stole the body of Jesus. Makes sense. But nevertheless, the point here is there's a huge neat thing going on in the text where the guards, these Romans, become like dead men before the presence of this holy angel. And the stone is rolled back, and the angel then let's see. and then the angel said to the women, it doesn't identify, yeah, there it is, sat on it. Yeah, rolled back the stone and he sat on it, sat on the stone. So this has the picture where, again, you have the round stone in front of a cave entrance, and the stone is rolled away. There's an angel sitting on top of the stone that's been rolled away. There's guards then that were guarding and whether you want to have them in like one little campfire on one side or you want to have them on either side, but they're lying down. They fell down like dead men, so they're pale. And some people would just have them go like, but they're dead. And then the women are standing outside the tomb talking with this angel. Do not be afraid, for I know what you're seeking. Right? So then they departed quickly from the tomb. So the women run away. The angel goes away. The dead soldiers, the like dead soldiers, revive themselves. Right? And here, so with fear and great joy, they ran to tell his disciples. And then you have, behold, Jesus met them and said, greetings. Met who? The disciples? The women? They came up and took hold of his feet and worshipped him. Then Jesus said to them, do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee, and there they will see me. See, and that indicates most likely this is the women that he meets on the way as they're running away with fear and trembling, that Jesus meets them and says greetings and points them back in the right direction again, right? Because even the angel told them, he is going before you to Galilee. There you will see him. See, I have told you, right? And then Jesus tells them the same thing. So there's kind of this repetitiveness. There's an emphasis on Jesus physically appearing to them, right? Giving the greetings, as well as the angel. How far did they get to ran and tell the disciples? I don't know. And maybe this, and again, this may correlate with certain things that we see in other gospels. It may not. But hello, this is Eccentric. Again, a reminder that we're live on Kick on Sunday afternoons. Try to start about 1. I got a little late start today. And then we upload these to Rumble and YouTube afterwards. So if you'd like to leave a comment in those, feel free to. I will try and get back to those comments to address any sort of questions you may have. Otherwise, live questions are more than welcome. But we're going to go through the various gospel accounts of the resurrection today and just take little looks at it to see what we see. We got the earthquake, we got the angel, again, a reminder that he sat on it. You give that appearance of dead men, the talking with the disciples, and then, of course, the soldiers that when they finally revive themselves, they go to the chief priests and they're paid to tell a lie. Think that's pretty much it. But there isn't a whole lot more than, again, tell the disciples, tell my brothers, right? There's this emphasis on telling and recounting that leads into, of course, later in Matthew 28, when he gives the Great Commission after they're in Galilee, right? The 11 disciples went to Galilee, right? And they met Jesus, and he says, go therefore make disciples of all nations, right? That's the main point in a lot of this, is go and tell. And so we get that point of go and tell, we get that point already in that resurrection account. And Matthew balances it from telling the truth that Jesus Christ is risen versus telling the lie of his disciples came by night and stole him away while we were sleeping, right? This may be just a tad too big. That's better. Or is that where it was before? I don't know. But that seems better. The other one seemed just a little too big. So let's go to Mark 16 and see what Mark has to say. This is the gospel lesson that I read this morning. When the Sabbath was past, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, note the comma, and Salome, so 3 women, bought spices so that they might go to and anoint him. And very early on the first day of the week, when the sun had risen, they went to the tomb, and they were saying to one another, "Who will roll away the stone for us from the entrance of the tomb?" And looking up, they saw that the stone had been rolled back. It was very large. And entering the tomb, they saw a young man sitting on the right side, dressed in a white robe, and they were alarmed. And he said to them, "Do not be alarmed. You seek Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He has risen. He is not here. See the place where they laid him. But go, tell his disciples and Peter that he is going before you to Galilee. There you will see him just as he told you." And they went out and fled from the tomb, for trembling and astonishment had seized them. And they said nothing to anyone, for they were afraid. Now, I'm not going to worry about any of this other stuff because, like this says, some of the earliest manuscripts do not include Mark 16, 9 to 20. There's a lot that could be said. I could spend a whole hour discussing all the stuff dealing with Mark 16 after the 8th verse. But there's enough in here to actually just focus in on this along with the rest of them. So before we just had Mary and Matthew, we just had Mary Magdalene and the other Mary. Here we have Mary Magdalene, Mary, and Salome, 3 women. And here we have, again, the identification that they bought spices. I'm trying to remember, did they identify the spices? Mary Magdalene, Mary, great earthquake, right? They went to see the tomb. Yeah. So here it shows you identification of what was their purpose in going. It wasn't just to see the tomb, but they bought spices to anoint his body for burial. Now, the assumption would be that there wasn't enough spices to anoint his body already, even though in the gospel lesson for Good Friday in John 19, there was 75 pounds of aloes or myrrh that were given for the burial of Jesus when he was actually buried by Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus. Oh my goodness. So, more spices. So they went early on when the sun was rising, right? I think the other one, Matthew just said early in the day. You also get the idea that there's this stone that they need to roll away, this worriment. But in Matthew, there was just the earthquake. Then they saw the stone had been rolled back. Here you also get the identification that it's a very large stone, which makes sense that it'd be a very large stone for a very large entrance. And here the women enter into the tomb. They saw a young man sitting there at the right side, right? So here is your figure for an angel. The young man dressed in a white robe and sitting at the right side. So there's something to be said about the right side in the sense that the right side is the gospel side. The right side is the place in which Jesus sits. The right side is the place in which you proclaim the gospel. Right? So the young man is sitting on the right side, dressed in a white robe, so he looks like an angel. So you either have the depiction that an angel is a young man, or a young man is a messenger of God, an angel. Now, however you want to do that, one of the key things with Mark's gospel, and this is what I actually talked about this morning, which I think is important, is if you scroll back to 1451, I believe it is, you have the betrayal and arrest of Jesus, and they all left him and fled. And then you have this addition, and a young man followed him with nothing but a linen cloth about his body. And they seized him, but he left the linen cloth and ran away naked. Right? This young man, these are the only two times where Mark uses this term, this word that means young man, is in 1451 for this young man who's in the garden, who flees with the rest of the disciples. And now this young man sits in the tomb to proclaim to the women, to identify for the women that Jesus is risen. Do not be alarmed. You seek Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. I'm not going to go into that. He has risen. He is not here. Right? See the place where they laid him. Which are, assumably, right, if he's sitting on the right, then he's gesturing left to identify the place where his body was laid, most likely also identifying the linen cloths as John and Peter described them. But then they're told, go and tell. Again, this go and tell aspect that you get from Matthew's gospel. Go tell his disciples and Peter. I don't know why Peter's excluded or separated. And don't give me all that papal stuff. But it seems like go tell his disciples and Peter that he is going before you to Galilee. There you will see him just as he told you. Which again, very similar to Matthew's gospel. This is the part that's not. They went out and fled from the tomb, for trembling and astonishment to see them. And they said nothing to anyone, for they were afraid. Right? In Matthew's gospel, they depart. So they departed quickly from the tomb. With fear and great joy, they ran to tell his disciples. And then they meet Jesus, and they get more information. But in Mark's gospel here, right, they are too afraid to say anything to anybody. Now, this is where I went in my sermon this morning, was to identify the aspect that part of this reason why Mark does this is because if those women hadn't told anyone, how do you know? The only way you know is that they had to eventually tell somebody. And Mark's audience is a Roman audience in a time of great persecution, of religious persecution. And so I think what Mark is doing is, and I'm not the only one who thinks this, which is always a good thing. It's a good thing to not have the only type of interpretation of something, but it's also probably not a great thing that it's not the prevalent interpretation. Prevalent interpretation, I think, is more inclined to say that, well, Mark forgot to finish his gospel, and so that's why we have all these extra endings. Versus, Mark intentionally finished his gospel this way because his audience is filled with trembling and fear from the not only secular authorities but also religious authorities, that they are afraid to tell anybody, that they sit in fear of death, right? Roman persecution, religious persecution from idolaters, religious persecution from Jews, religious persecution from false Christians, right? And secular persecutions. So they're afraid to tell people. And this is what Mark is putting out, is that if these disciples, if these women who actually saw the angel, the young man, proclaim to them this good news that Christ is risen, and they didn't tell anybody, what would happen? How would you know? So therefore, this goes into Romans, Romans 10, right? It's 10, 11. Right? How then will they call on him in whom they have not believed? And how will they believe in him in whom they have never heard? And how are they to hear without someone preaching? And how are they to preach unless they are sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who preach the good news. Right? This is part of that point that I think Mark is trying to get across to his people, his readers, but also to us. How often are we in conversations with people about some religious matter or some even maybe it's a social matter, but the Bible speaks very clearly on the issue, and we're just like, well, it's interesting, or we go into some philosophical diatribe rather than speaking from the biblical truth. I mean, there's all sorts of ways in which we can do that. But I think that's really the setup at the end. And the endings just in some sense weaken that. When you have, now when he arose early the first day of the week, he appeared first to Mary Magdalene, for whom he had cast out 7 demons. Right? All of this stuff kind of just, it takes away from the force of this being set up, where how would you know if they didn't say anything? How would you know if they acted like you're acting? And I think that's one of the problems we have in the church today. One of the other problems we have in the church today, I very much think, is biblical literacy, and especially in our middle school and high school age kids, so that they don't understand what the Bible actually says about things, or that the Bible actually has a position on things. And then you get to the already gone type of crowd where they think of church as a Sunday school thing, where church is ultimately for little kids and old ladies, right? Where it's just about teaching them fun little fairy tale stories, and then it's about comforting old ladies who have lost their husbands or who are going to lose their husbands, when that's not what it's about at all. But all right, next, Luke 24. Again, if you have any questions, if you have any thoughts, just pop on in there in Kick Live, or put your thoughts down below. Feel free. Feel free to interrupt me too. Okay, Luke 24, the orderly account. But on the first day of the week, at early dawn, they went to the tomb, taking the spices they had prepared. And they found the stone rolled away from the tomb. But when they went in, they did not find the body of the Lord Jesus. While they were perplexed about this, behold, 2 men stood by them in dazzling apparel. And as they were frightened and bowed their faces to the ground, the men said to them, "Why do you seek the living among the dead? He is not here, but has risen. Remember how he told you, while he was still in Galilee, that the Son of Man must be delivered into the hands of sinful men and be crucified, and on the 3rd day rise." And they remembered his words, And returning from the tomb, they told all these things to the 11 and to all the rest. Now it was Mary Magdalene and Joanna and Mary the mother of James and the other women with them who told these things to the apostles. But these words seemed to them an idle tale, and they did not believe them. But Peter rose and ran to the tomb. Stooping and looking in, he saw the linen cloths by themselves, and he went home marveling at what had happened. Right? So even on the road to Emmaus, so I'm not going to go through the Emmaus account because then you have the Emmaus account and then the return account and so forth. But right, when they're having this conversation, right, they even talk about the troubling things. Yeah, yes, and besides all this, it is now the third day since this has happened. Moreover, some women of our company amazed us. They were at the tomb early in the morning, and when they did not find his body, they came back, saying that they had even seen a vision of angels, who said that he was alive. Some of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said. Right? So the road to Emmaus people apparently had heard the account of not only Peter, who rose and went there, but of the women. All right, do you think that the verse could, in the Gospel of Mark, could have meant, tell the disciples, including especially Peter? So to go back to that, which is a great question, with the emphasis on, tell his disciples and Peter. Right? So you could say, tell the disciples, even Peter, right? So I don't think it's setting Peter apart from the disciples. I think it is recognizing that inclusivity of Peter in the disciples. I think the reason why Mark is actually doing that, of setting out Peter, is for two reasons. One, Mark was a follower of Peter, and most people recognize Mark following Peter's apostleship, so therefore Mark has more of a Petrine account. Ugh, weird. More of an account from Peter's perspective. So therefore, Mark is adding that in there for emphasis that Peter was told. Right? That's how you get it. I think there's also the aspect that some people would say is that, Peter's the one who denied him 3 times. So there is that aspect where Peter, in denying him 3 times, separates himself from discipleship. And when John's gospel, he asks Peter, do you love me 3 times? There's kind of this historical connection to the restoration of Peter, right? Because Peter is taken from the place of, you denied me, you rejected me, to now you are the leader of my sheep. Now you are there to take care of, protect my sheep, my lambs, feed my lambs, right? Tend my sheep. So I think there's something that could be said along those lines of especially Peter. You could be setting Peter apart in that way. But if it is setting Peter apart, I would argue that it's setting Peter apart because at this time he hasn't been restored of the 3 times, do you love me? I also like the argument of this is Mark's connection with Peter and the Petrine authority, right, of his gospel. Which goes along, again, that same path of if the women didn't actually do this, how does Peter know? How does Peter run to the tomb? How does Peter stoop down and look to see that the linen cloths are folded and right together? Right? The only way that happens is that the women actually didn't say nothing to nobody, but they actually told the disciples. They did eventually do what they were supposed to do. So, again, you go and do what you're supposed to do. But I would definitely be opposed to any sort of, like, Peter is any sort of papal interpretation. I mean, I would be opposed to that. But Peter has a prominent role. But even here in Luke's gospel, right, it is this emphasis that Mary Magdalene, Joanna, and Mary, the mother of James, and the other women. So here you not only have Mary Magdalene, Mary, the mother of James, which are included in the other two, but here you have Joanna, which was not included in either of the other two, and then you say other women. Right? So now you have more women included rather than just Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and then Salome as one of the other women. Now you have also Joanna. And so we have a bunch of women who go out and do this. So, yeah, first day of the week, they found the stone rolled away from the tomb, but when they went in, they did not find the body of the Lord Jesus. So they perplexed and marveled. Angel, right, faces to the ground. Why do you seek the living among the dead? Pretty simple question of recognizing, where do you seek the living among the living? Where do you seek the one who is risen among the living? Remember how he told you that he was still in Galilee. And this is a great recalling for a historical account of Luke, that the Son of Man must be delivered into the hands of sinful men, crucified, and on the third day rise. So he's emphasizing the resurrection that was foretold, right? And returning from the tomb, they told all these things to the 11 and all the rest. And then it identifies who told them, right? Rather than identifying the women up here. But these words seem to be idle tale, and people didn't believe them. So even the Road to Emmaus disciples seem to not quite believe what the women told them. They're even more astonished that Peter rose, ran out to the tomb, looked in, saw these things, and reported back. And they're still not quite prepared to accept it. Rather, they're going to take their 7 miles journey to Emmaus. It doesn't really say why. Whether their home was in Emmaus, it doesn't identify why they're going to Emmaus, which is interesting to me. But so Luke again is setting forth a straightforward account. Living with the dead, you have the aspect of the dazzling white clothes. What else do we have here? I guess we got the woman telling tales, maybe. But so here it doesn't matter whether it's the women that are accounting for it or even Peter himself that's accounting for it. But all right. On to John 20. All right. Now, on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb early. So here you just have Mary Magdalene. Saw that the stone had been taken away from the tomb. So she ran and went to Simon Peter and the other disciple. So note here, no angel seen in this first part, right? She simply sees that the stone had been taken away, runs back to get Simon Peter and the disciple whom Jesus loved. The disciple, the one whom Jesus loved. And said to them, "They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we do not know where they have laid him." Right? So Peter went out with the other disciple, and they were going toward the tomb. Both of them were running together, but the other disciple outran Peter because the other disciple is so much better than Peter. Reached the tomb first, and stooping to look in, he saw the linen cloths lying there, but he did not go in. Then Simon Peter came, following him, and went in to the tomb. So the disciple whom Jesus loved, John, runs to the tomb, outruns Peter, gets there, stoops down, looks in the tomb, sees the linen cloths. Peter comes running in behind him, just runs right into the tomb, and looks, sees the linen cloths, and sees the face cloth lying separate. Oh, did we not get to that part? He saw the linen cloths lying there, and the face cloth which had been on Jesus' head, not lying with the linen cloths, but folded up in a place by itself. Then the other disciple who had reached the tomb first also went in and saw and believed. For as yet they did not understand the scripture that he must rise from the dead. Then the disciples went back to their homes. Okay? So the disciples go back. Now is when you get the real kind of account. Mary stood weeping outside the tomb, and as she stooped to look into the tomb, and saw two angels in white sitting where the body of Jesus had been lain. And this is identification, one at the head and one at the feet. It doesn't say right and left, but head and feet of where his body lay. I think that's interesting. I don't know what significance I can make out of that particularly, but one sat at the head and one sat at the feet. They said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping?" She said to them, "They have taken away my Lord, and I do not know where they have laid him." Having said this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing, but she did not know that it was Jesus. Jesus said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you seeking?" Supposing him to be the gardener, she said to him, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him. I will take him away." Jesus said to Mary, or said to her, "Mary." She turned and she said to him in Aramaic, "Rabboni," which means teacher or rabbi. Jesus said to her, "Do not cling to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father. But go to my brothers and tell to them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Mary Magdalene went and announced to the disciples, "I have seen the Lord," and that he said these things. All right, then later that evening he appears to the disciples. He says, "Peace be with you." And then we have, "Peace be with you, as the Father has sent me, even so I am sending you. Rejoice, the Holy Spirit. If you forgive the sins of any, they are forgiven. And if you withhold forgiveness from any, they are withheld." Okay, that's given to... So, I really want to get into this next week. Because next week, I believe... Let's go back to this. Year C, Easter. Yeah, I want this. Easter Monday. Second Sunday of Easter. We have John 19 to 31. 19 to 31. So we'll go over more of that next week. Just sticking with this first part, right? You have the Peter running to the tomb, entering the tomb. You have John running to the tomb and waiting for Peter to get there, then entering the tomb. They both see just the face cloth and the linen cloths folded up neatly and lying in one place, and they believe. Mary Magdalene, still troubled, she weeps outside the tomb. Jesus appears to her and finally identifies himself by saying her name, by calling her by name. She knows his voice, and she calls him Rabbi. And then he identifies not to cling to him. And so she goes back. She tells the disciples, I have seen the Lord. But again, here, we only have that kind of connection with, we just have Mary Magdalene. We don't get the angels until after Peter and John have come and inspected the tomb and believed. Then for Mary's sake, you get an angel that appears, one in his head and one in his foot. Now, I also want to find this. I think. Oh, I don't know that I have this. Let's go here. No, I don't need that. Don't need that. We're in John 20, and I'm looking for a picture to pop up. Might have been earlier. Yeah, right here. This is an excellent picture for emphatic reasons. One, you see what a tomb generally looks like, because a tomb would have a pit dug in the center for people to stand and work. Then you'd have about, so it says 60 inches, so about 6 foot sides for that area. And on those sides, you would then be able to lay out a body here, you'd be able to lay out a body here, and you'd be able to lay out a body here. Now, you wouldn't lay out a body here, so it's not generally for 4, because you wouldn't want to block the entrance, right? So just for 3, and what you'd do is you'd wrap the bodies in cloth, you'd put some sort of, like perfumes, ointments, stuff like that to make sure that they don't become too odorous, but also something with the wrapping of the linen so that the bodies do decay naturally. And with that, so you'd wrap the bodies up in these cloths, you'd lay them out there, and then you'd be able to allow them, as they lay out there, that you could then have one body laying there for a while, one body there, one body there. Now, Jesus was in a new cut tomb, so there'd be no other bodies there. But what you would do is you'd have, so you got a body there, you got a body there, now you got a body there. Well, when you need another body, you take the oldest body, or the one that's the most decayed, and you basically put it into an ossuary box, which is basically like a small treasure chest, or a small, not a small treasure chest, but I mean like probably 2 foot by 1 foot box, something like that. You'd cram that body into as it's decayed, all wrapped up in those various cloths. You'd put it in that box and you'd shove it down one of these. You'd shove it down one of these coca. And you generally try and associate like family members to be down. I mean, at least that's kind of the interpretation that they would generally, you try and keep family members together, like husband, wife down one. Maybe you have their fathers and mothers in a different one. But husband's wife, maybe children together. Maybe you kind of trail with, as families obviously grow. And these then would be what could potentially get dug out further. So, like, even though this shows these nice, clean, dugout tunnels, I mean, are they digging everything out, like line squared? No. But they would dig out these tunnels, and sometimes even these tunnels would kind of curve back as they would get, more things to shove down them. So you'd have the most recent bodies kind of towards the front, the less recent bodies towards the back. You'd have fresh bodies here. And so this is where Jesus would have laid. And so he would have had an angel then at the head and an angel at the foot, right? And so the idea would be is that this is where Jesus' body laid, and having these two angels sit there. Now, if you kind of look at the way this picture cuts the cuff of the angel, and you think of angels, right? Now think of these as two cherubs, right? And you think of this as the place between them, and their hands covering over them, and you get a picture of the Ark of the Covenant. I don't know if you can see it there, but that's the point ultimately. Let me see if I can search Ark of the Covenant. And I want morphs. I want maps media, maybe. So you see how you have the picture of the Ark of the... Great. Opened a different window. But you see how you have that picture of the Ark of the Covenant. Now it's got kind of steeple things on these sides or here, right? So you have one cherub on one side, one cherub on another side. Those sides. See what else we got. Like this one even. So if you have one sitting in his head and one sitting in his foot and Jesus' body laying in between them, that type of thing is what you're looking at or trying to correlate with. Maybe here are some better pictures like here. So you can see. Now that doesn't look like it's long enough to lay a body. So that's why the body wasn't laid on the Ark of the Covenant. The body was laid in a new tomb. But the angels are like the Ark of the Covenant. That's the point. There's another one. That one popped in. I'm standing there. So. But that's the picture that you kind of are associating with this. That's the picture in John's Gospel for Mary as she stoops down and looks in and sees the two angels there and then meets Jesus risen from the dead. All right. So that's going through the gospel accounts of Easter, of the resurrection for Easter 4/20/25. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them down in the comments below on Kick or Rumble. No, not on Kick. On YouTube or Rumble. I will try my best to answer any questions that you may have about these accounts, as we will We will definitely be discussing the rest of John chapter 20 next Sunday. And next Sunday, we are probably going to have a brief Sunday follow up because I have another thing that I got to get to. But that is it for today. So you have a blessed Easter season as we begin the Easter season, a joyous renewal. And today is also, I believe, the 6th or 7th night of Passover in the Feast of Unleavened Bread celebration. So enjoy that. God's blessings. Christ is risen. He is risen indeed. Alleluia.